I hated the late shift in November. Pine Creek got dark by 4:30, and the temperatures dropped to numbers that made my fingers stiff even inside the station. Most nights nothing happened beyond the occasional drunk driver or domestic dispute. The small Maine town typically settled into hibernation mode once the leaves fell. The call came in at 11:17 p.m. I checked my watch out of habit, marking the time mentally as dispatch patched through. A young woman hadn't returned from her evening run. I wouldn't normally worry. Adults go missing for hours all the time for perfectly innocent reasons. But the boyfriend had gone to check her apartment and found blood. "Reynolds," I answered, reaching for my coat. "Details?" "Libby Ray, 22, student at the community college. Works at the Blue Diner. Boyfriend's name is Charlie Wade. He says there's blood in her bathroom, and she's not answering her phone. He's still at the apartment on Elm Street. Address? Oakwood Apartments, Unit 216. I'm on my way. Send Weathers to meet me there." I'd worked with Sam Weathers for about 8 months. Good rookie. Thorough. Asked the right questions, didn't jump to conclusions. We needed that tonight. The roads were empty. Pine Creek had maybe 12,000 people on a good day, and most of them were home by 10 on weeknights. I made it to Elm Street in under 5 minutes, parked at the curb of the 3-story apartment building, and spotted Sam already waiting in the lot. "Hey, Mark," Sam nodded, adjusting their glasses. "Boyfriend's upstairs, pretty worked up." "He touch anything?" "Says he checked the whole apartment for her, so yeah, probably everything." "Great. Nothing like contaminated evidence to start a case." We took the stairs to the second floor. A young man with disheveled blonde hair paced the hallway outside Unit 216. He wore jeans and a black hoodie with the logo of Murphy's Bar across the chest, half tucked in like he'd dressed in a hurry. "Charlie Wade?" I asked. He stopped pacing, his face a strange mix of panic and control. "Yeah, that's me. You have to find Libby, there's blood everywhere in there." I nodded to Sam, who pulled out a notebook. "We're going to do everything we can, but first I need you to tell me exactly what happened. When did you last see Libby?" "This morning. She had class, then work at the diner until 8. She always goes for a run after her shift. Says it helps her unwind. I was working at Murphy's until 10. I tried calling her after my shift, but she didn't answer. I tried 3 more times, then came over." Charlie ran a hand through his hair. "The door was unlocked, which isn't like her at all. I called her name, but when I got to the bathroom..." He trailed off, looking down at his hands. "Okay," I said. "Wait out here with Officer Weathers while I take a look." The apartment door stood slightly ajar. I pulled on latex gloves before pushing it open, careful not to disturb potential evidence. The living room looked normal. Small couch, coffee table with textbooks and a half-empty mug, TV mounted on the wall. Kitchen to the left, spotless except for a single plate in the sink. Then I reached the bathroom. 8 years on the force in Pine Creek, and I'd never seen anything like it. The mirror above the sink had been shattered, shards of glass scattered across the white tile floor. Blood had sprayed across the walls in violent arcs, high-velocity spatter consistent with either a gunshot or repeated blunt force. A large pool of half-dried blood had collected near the bathtub. What caught my attention wasn't just the volume of blood, but the pattern. It wasn't consistent with a simple assault or even a stabbing. The spatter reached too high on the walls, spread too widely across too many surfaces, and there were smears that didn't match any injury pattern I recognized. I backed out of the bathroom and followed a trail of blood droplets to the bedroom. The window stood open, the thin curtains fluttering in the bitter November air. The bed was still made, but the comforter had blood smears along one edge. Drag marks in the carpet led from the bathroom to the window. Someone had taken her out that way. I returned to the hallway where Sam was interviewing Charlie. "Mr. Wade, did you close any windows when you arrived?" He shook his head. "No. I didn't touch anything once I saw the bathroom. Just checked if she was here, then called 911. And the bedroom window was open when you arrived?" "Yeah, it was freezing in there." His eyes darted toward the apartment door. "Is it bad in there? Can I see her?" "She's not in the apartment, Mr. Wade," I said, watching his reaction carefully. "When exactly did you get here?" "Around 10:45, I think. I didn't check the time." "And you were at work until 10? "Yeah, tending bar. Talk to Murphy, he'll confirm it." I nodded to Sam. "Call it in. full team, and get someone to Murphy's bar to verify his alibi." Sam stepped away to make the call while I continued questioning Charlie. He maintained unusual composure for a guy whose girlfriend was missing. He answered questions directly, without the emotional outbursts I typically saw in these situations. But his hands shook, and he kept glancing at the apartment door. Did Libby have any enemies? Anyone who'd want to hurt her? No. Everyone loves Libby. She's the nicest person I know. His use of present tense didn't escape my notice. Either he was hopeful or in denial. Any ex-boyfriends, stalkers, problems at work or school? Charlie shook his head. Nothing like that. How about you two? Everything good between you? His jaw tightened. What are you implying? Standard questions, Mr. Wade. I need to build a complete picture. We're fine. Ask anyone. The defensive tone told me otherwise. The hallway filled with officers and crime scene techs within 30 minutes. I briefed everyone, assigned search areas, and told them to check neighboring apartments for witnesses. It got even colder. I stepped outside for a bit, needing a break from everything happening inside. My breath made little clouds in the night air. I pulled my coat tighter and tried to make sense of what I'd seen. The violence in that bathroom wasn't normal for Pine Creek. We had our share of domestic problems and bar fights, but this much blood meant something way more violent. And the drag marks to the window showed planning. Someone had taken her body on purpose, carefully. I counted windows to find Unit 216. The bedroom window was easy to spot from where I stood, just a dark rectangle in the brick building. The drop was about 20 feet. Tough, but doable if someone had help or the right gear. This case felt off completely. The timing. The boyfriend's calm behavior. The violence itself. In 8 years as a cop, I'd never seen anything this bad in our quiet town. I headed back inside the apartment building, the cold air following me through the door. The hallway had transformed into a fully operational crime scene. Techs in white coveralls snapped photos of the blood trail, collected samples, and dusted surfaces for prints. The metallic smell of blood hung in the air, mixed with the chemical odor of the tech's equipment. "Mark," Sam called, motioning me over. Murphy confirmed Wade was working until 10 p.m. We've got the bar's security footage coming in to verify. I nodded, watching Charlie Wade lean against the wall across from Libby's apartment. His arms were crossed over his chest, and his eyes followed each technician going in and out of the unit. The calm look he'd had earlier was breaking down, showing hints of worry underneath. "Let's take him to the station," I said quietly. "I want him in the interview room." Sam nodded. "You want me to do the honors? I'll handle it." I approached Charlie, noticing how he straightened up as I came near. "Mr. Wade, we need to continue this conversation at the station." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Am I under arrest?" "We're just trying to find Libby," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Standard procedure in a missing persons case." He hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. Whatever helps find her." As Charlie pushed away from the wall, I noticed dark specks on his white sneakers. Blood. Could have gotten there when he checked the bathroom, but I filed the observation away. "My car or yours?" he asked. "You'll ride with us." The drive to the station was silent. In the rearview mirror, I watched Charlie stare out the window, his right hand absently rubbing a scratch on his left forearm. Another detail to add to my mental notes. The Pine Creek Police Station was a single-story brick building downtown, quiet at this hour except for the night dispatcher. We arrived at 1:30 a.m. according to the wall clock as we entered through the rear door. I nodded to the officer at the desk while Sam guided Charlie toward interview room 2. The room was small and sparse. A metal table bolted to the floor, 3 chairs, and a 2-way mirror along one wall. I asked Charlie to take a seat while Sam set up the recording equipment. "Let's start from the beginning," I said, sitting across from him. "When did you last see Libby?" "Like I told you this morning, around 7:30. Charlie's voice remained steady. "She had class at 9, then work at the diner until 8. "And your movements today?" "I had a shift at Murphy's from 2 to 10. After work, I went home, showered, then tried calling Libby. When she didn't answer, I went to her place." "What time did you arrive at her apartment?" "Around 10:45, I think. That's almost 45 minutes after you got off work. Your apartment is only 10 minutes from Murphy's, and Libby's place is another 5 minutes from yours. What took so long?" Charlie's jaw tightened. "I told you, I went home and showered first." "A 30-minute shower?" "I don't know, I didn't time it." His eyes flicked toward the door. "Is this really helping find Libby?" I leaned forward slightly. "Those are blood specks on your shoes, aren't they?" He looked down, as if noticing them for the first time. "Yeah, I stepped in some blood in the bathroom when I was looking for her." "And the scratch on your arm?" Charlie glanced at his forearm. "I cut myself on the broken mirror in her bathroom. I reached in to check behind the shower curtain and caught my arm on a shard." I made a note in my pad. "Pretty nasty cut for a mirror shard." "Those things are sharp, man. We'll need to take your shoes and a DNA sample to eliminate your blood from what we found at the scene." Charlie nodded slowly. "Sure, whatever you need." Sam excused themselves to check on the forensics team's progress, leaving me alone with Charlie. The gap in his timeline bothered me. 30 minutes unaccounted for between leaving work and arriving at Libby's. More than enough time to create the scene we'd found. My phone buzzed. Text from the crime scene tech. "Partial bloody handprint on window matches, preliminary size pattern of suspect's right hand. Full comparison pending." I set my phone down and studied Charlie's face. "How would you describe your relationship with Libby?" "Good. We've been together almost 2 years." "No problems? Arguments?" He hesitated. "Every couple fights sometimes." "What about recently?" "Nothing serious." "But something?" I pressed. Charlie sighed. "She's been distant the past couple weeks. Busy with school," she said. I circled back to his alibi. "So you left Murphy's at 10, went home to shower, then headed to Libby's when she didn't answer your calls. Anyone see you during that time?" "No, I live alone." Sam returned with a paper cup of coffee for me and water for Charlie. "Forensics found additional blood evidence in the kitchen and bedroom," they informed me quietly. "And that partial handprint on the windowsill, it's looking like a match for Mr. Wade's right hand based on size and pattern." I thanked Sam and turned back to Charlie. "So, about that handprint on Libby's bedroom windowsill." Charlie's eyes widened slightly. "What handprint?" "The bloody one that matches your hand. I told you I checked the whole apartment. I probably touched the window when I was looking to see if she might be outside." We continued questioning Charlie until 3 a.m., his story remaining frustratingly consistent despite the mounting evidence. I ordered a DNA swab and had an officer collect his shoes, then left him in the interview room while I stepped out to coordinate the search effort. By 5 a.m., the first search teams had assembled in the station parking lot. Dawn approached, turning the eastern sky a lighter shade of black. Officers with flashlights prepared to comb the wooded area around Riverside Park where Libby ran nightly. I briefed the team quickly, distributing her photo and emphasizing the urgency. "We're looking for any sign of Libby Ray or evidence related to her disappearance. Focus on the running trails first, then expand outward. She was last seen wearing blue running tights, a gray sweatshirt, and white Nikes. Report anything unusual immediately." Questions? There were none. The teams departed, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness as they headed toward the park. I needed coffee. The station's old machine produced a black liquid that tasted like burned plastic, but the caffeine would help. While I waited for it to brew, Sam approached with a folder. "Forensics confirmed the blood in the bathroom is Libby's, type B positive," they said. "The partial handprint on the window is consistent with Wade's hand size and ridge patterns. His shoes have Libby's blood on them, which matches his story about stepping in the bathroom. But there's one thing." "What is it?" "The pattern of blood drops leading to the bedroom window. They're consistent with blood falling from something being carried, not someone walking and dripping blood themselves." I considered this. So someone carried her out the window. Looks that way, and the drag marks in the carpet support that theory. I rubbed my eyes. "What about the blood spatter analysis?" "That's the other thing," Sam lowered their voice. "Bell from Forensics says the pattern indicates extreme force, more than a typical assault. Like someone... I don't know how to put this. Like someone was trying to tear her apart." The coffee machine beeped. I poured a cup, my mind sorting through the evidence. Something about this case felt off. The violence seemed excessive, almost theatrical, but the physical evidence pointed directly to Charlie Wade. I'm going to interview Libby's co-workers at the Blue Diner, I decided. Keep me updated on the search. The diner was just opening when I arrived. The morning cook let me in and I found 3 waitresses setting up for breakfast service. All of them knew Libby. "She's the best of us," said Jenny, the oldest of the group, her eyes red from crying. "Always on time, covers shifts when we need it. Customers love her." "How was she yesterday?" I asked. "Quiet," another waitress named Dana replied, "but she's been like that lately." "Any reason why?" The women exchanged glances before Jenny answered. "She and Charlie have been having problems. She told me last week she was thinking about breaking up with him." "Did she say why?" "He gets jealous. Like real jealous. One of our regulars left her a big tip, and Charlie showed up here making a scene, accusing her of flirting for money." "When was this?" "About 2 weeks ago." Libby was so embarrassed. She told me afterward that she couldn't take his possessiveness anymore. "Did Charlie ever threaten her? Get physical?" Jenny shook her head. "Not that she told me, but she's been avoiding him lately, making excuses not to see him after work." I collected statements from all 3 women, then headed back to the station. The search teams had found nothing so far. No trace of Libby along her running route or in the surrounding woods. Charlie Wade was still in the interview room when I returned, looking tired but composed. I laid out the new information directly. "Libby was planning to break up with you." His face flushed. "That's not true. Her co-workers say otherwise. They say you've been having problems, that you made a scene at her workplace over a tip from a customer." "That guy was hitting on her," Charlie snapped, his composure cracking. "And yeah, we've had some arguments, but she wasn't breaking up with me. Your jealousy issues were a problem for her. Look, I get a little protective sometimes. That doesn't mean I'd hurt her." His voice rose. "I love Libby. I would never—" "Then explain the blood in her apartment. Explain the 30 minutes you can't account for between leaving work and arriving at her place. Explain the bloody handprint on her window." Charlie stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I've told you everything. I didn't do anything to her." I stayed in my seat, watching him blow up. His anger looked real, but something wasn't right. The violence at Libby's place was too brutal and planned out, not like when a jealous boyfriend snaps. Those are usually messy but simple. What we found in her bathroom pointed to something else, something worse. But the evidence kept piling up. Blood matching Libby's type. Charlie's missing 30 minutes. The handprint. His jealousy. Her plans to break up with him. By noon, I had enough to hold him. I read Charlie his rights while Sam put the cuffs on him. "I didn't do anything to her," he repeated, his voice now hollow as the reality of his situation sank in. "You're making a mistake." As they led Charlie to booking, I returned to my desk and stared at the preliminary crime scene photos. The blood spatter pattern bothered me. The violence it suggested seemed at odds with everything I'd observed about Charlie Wade, his controlled composure, his genuine concern. But evidence didn't lie. The physical facts pointed to him, and my job was to follow where they led. I just couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something crucial, something that would explain the brutal, almost inhuman violence in that small bathroom. For now, though, Charlie Wade would remain in custody while we continued searching for Libby. Whether to rescue her or recover her body remained to be seen. 3 days passed without a trace of Libby Ray. Each search party returned empty-handed. Each canvass of the area yielded nothing new. Charlie Wade remained in custody, maintaining his innocence through multiple interrogations. The evidence against him mounted, the blood at the scene, the unexplained time window, the matching handprint, but something about the case continued to nag at me. My phone rang at 6:15 a.m. on Monday morning. The frost outside my bedroom window had turned the world white. "Reynolds," I answered, instantly alert despite the early hour. "Hey, it's Michaels. Hikers found a body in Whitman Woods, female running clothes." My stomach tightened. "Coordinates?" 2 miles northeast of the Hemlock Trail entrance. We've secured the scene. I'm on my way. Call Dr. Moore." I dressed quickly in the cold apartment, my breath visible in the bedroom air. The heater had died again during the night. The temperature matched my mood, bitter and unforgiving. Whitman Woods was on the northern edge of Pine Creek, a big forest of oak, maple, and pine that went on for miles into the next county. The November frost had stripped most trees bare, leaving just branches against the brightening sky. I parked at the Hemlock Trail entrance where Officer Peterson waited to guide me to the scene. We walked in silence, our footsteps crunching through frozen leaves and twigs. The morning sun was coming up through the trees. "Over here, Mike," Peterson said, pointing to where yellow crime scene tape cordoned off a small clearing. 4 officers maintained the perimeter, their faces grim in the cold morning light. Beyond them, partially hidden by a shallow covering of leaves, lay what I already knew was Libby Ray. I pulled on latex gloves as I approached, forcing myself to look directly at what remained of the young woman. She lay on her back, arms at her sides, her running clothes torn and stained dark with dried blood. Someone had arranged her this way. This wasn't how a body fell. The leaves covering her lower half had been deliberately placed. I took a deep breath and moved closer, kneeling beside her. The blood-soaked gray sweatshirt matched the description of what she'd been wearing the night she disappeared. Her blue running tights were torn at the knees, showing defensive scrapes underneath. When I finally allowed myself to look at her face, my years of professional detachment nearly crumbled. Large sections of skin had been removed from her cheeks and scalp, the edges of the wounds impossibly clean, as if cut by a scalpel. Her eyes were gone, leaving empty sockets caked with dried blood. Her mouth hung slightly open, frozen in what might have been her final attempt to scream. I forced myself to look, to observe, to remember, for her sake, if nothing else. This wasn't just a crime scene. This was Libby Ray, who'd had plans and dreams 3 days ago. The sound of crunching leaves announced Dr. Patricia Moore's arrival. The medical examiner approached with her usual measured steps, her silver-streaked hair pulled back tightly. She knelt across from me, her expression remaining professional despite the horror before us. "Oh, you poor girl," she murmured, almost too quietly for me to hear. She examined the body methodically, her gloved hands gentle as she checked for rigor mortis and other indicators of time of death. After several minutes, she looked up at me. "From body temperature and environmental factors, I'd estimate she's been dead approximately 10 to 12 hours. But the injuries..." Dr. Moore paused, her green eyes meeting mine. "The injuries were inflicted much earlier. Meaning she survived for some time after the attack." Dr. Moore pointed to Libby's hands. "See these defensive wounds? She fought back, hard. There are skin cells under her fingernails. We may get DNA." I nodded, feeling a quick flash of hope. Maybe there was proof that could clear Charlie's name or show he did it for sure. "The facial injuries are..." Dr. Moore hesitated, something unusual for her. "The precision is remarkable. These weren't made with a household knife or typical weapon. The cuts are clean, almost surgical, and the force required to remove tissue this way exceeds what I would expect from an average person, even in a state of extreme emotion." She leaned closer to examine the eye sockets. The eyes were removed ante-mortem. My head snapped up. She was alive when that happened? Dr. Moore nodded grimly. "Yes, and conscious, judging by the stress indicators in the surrounding tissue." I swallowed hard, forcing back the wave of nausea that threatened to overwhelm me. "Cause of death? Preliminary finding is hypothermia. The blood loss was severe but not immediately fatal. She would have been weakened, unable to move or seek help." Dr. Moore stood up slowly. "She died from exposure, Detective. Out here, alone, after hours of suffering." That knowledge hit me hard. I'd seen plenty of violence in my career, but this calculated cruelty was different. "I need to ask Trish," I said quietly, using her nickname from our long professional association. "Could Charlie Wade have done this?" Dr. Moore considered the question carefully before answering. "The force and precision required, it's not impossible, but it's unlikely for someone without medical training. These cuts were made with extraordinary control, even as the victim struggled." She looked at me directly. "Between you and me, I've never seen wounds like this from a crime of passion or rage. This was calculated. Clinical." I nodded, filing that information away. "Full workup as soon as possible?" "You'll have preliminary findings this afternoon. I'll process this myself." As the forensics team documented the scene and prepared to transport Libby's body, I walked the perimeter, searching for anything the killer might have left behind. 20 yards away, I found a patch of disturbed earth where someone had knelt, perhaps to clean up or change clothes. Another 10 yards beyond that, I discovered a single tooth, small and partially covered with dried blood, lying on a bed of fallen leaves. I called over a forensics technician who carefully bagged the tooth as evidence. In the growing daylight, I surveyed the surrounding woods, trying to reconstruct what had happened. The location was remote, accessible only by foot. The killer had either carried or forced Libby to walk 2 miles from the nearest trail access. Why here? Why not somewhere easier to reach? By the time I returned to the station, it was nearly noon. The news of Libby's discovery had spread through Pine Creek like wildfire. Local reporters gathered outside the police building, shouting questions as I pushed past them into the lobby. Sam waited for me inside, their face solemn. How bad? Worse than anything I've seen, I replied, heading straight for the coffee machine. My hands shook slightly as I poured a cup. We need to tell Wade. Charlie had been held in a cell at our small station rather than transferred to county pending formal charges. I found him sitting on the edge of the metal cot, staring at the wall. He looked up as I approached, his expression hopeful. Did you find her? I never enjoyed this part of the job. No matter how many times I delivered news of death, it never got easier, even when speaking to a suspected killer. Yes. I'm sorry to inform you that Libby Ray was found deceased this morning in Whitman Woods. Charlie didn't answer right away. He blinked a few times like he was trying to understand what I'd just said. Then his face twisted up and he made this gut-wrenching noise as he slid off the cot and dropped to his knees on the cell floor. No, he moaned, rocking back and forth. No, no, no. His breakdown continued for several minutes. I'd seen many reactions to death notifications over the years, calculated performances, quiet shock, violent outbursts. But Charlie's response struck me as deeply genuine. His body shook with sobs, his breathing became erratic, and he retched into the cell toilet. When he finally looked up at me, his face was transformed by grief. How? He asked, his voice raw. I considered how much to tell him. If he was the killer, he already knew. If he wasn't, the details would only add to his trauma. The medical examiner is determining that now, I said. Charlie wiped his face with his sleeve. I didn't do it. I could never hurt her. You have to believe me. The evidence, I don't care what it looks like, he shouted, suddenly on his feet. I loved her. Someone else did this. Someone else was in her apartment. I watched him carefully. Either Charlie Wade was telling the truth, or he was the most convincing actor I'd encountered in years of law enforcement. We found a tooth at the scene, I said, testing his reaction. Not hers. Charlie stared at me blankly. What does that mean? It means we're investigating all possibilities. By evening, Dr. Moore had completed her preliminary examination. Her findings confirmed what she'd observed at the scene. Libby had survived for hours after the attack, eventually dying from exposure. The precision of the wounds indicated possible medical knowledge. Defensive injuries showed she had fought her attacker. Time of death was estimated between 8 p.m. and midnight the previous night. The district attorney arrived at the station just after 7, his suit impeccable despite the late hour. Walter Kingsley had been Pine Creek's DA for 15 years. He was a political animal with ambitions for higher office and a perfect conviction record he protected fiercely. We're filing charges tomorrow, he announced without preamble, dropping into the chair across from my desk. First-degree murder, kidnapping, torture, the works. We're still processing evidence, I cautioned. There are aspects of this case that don't add up. Kingsley leaned forward. What doesn't add up, Reynolds? We have the boyfriend with no alibi for the critical time period. We have his handprint at the scene, we have a history of jealousy and possessiveness, and the girlfriend was planning to dump him. He tapped my desk for emphasis. That's the classic domestic homicide playbook. The nature of the injuries indicates extreme rage. Again, typical in these cases. I shook my head. Dr. Moore notes the wounds show surgical precision. Charlie has no medical training, so he watched a few episodes of some medical show. Kingsley dismissed with a wave. People learn all kinds of things on the internet these days. There's also the matter of the tooth we found at the scene. Probably animal, or unrelated. The DA's mind was made up. I recognized the look. He already had his press conference planned, his narrative constructed. Charlie Wade was the perfect suspect, the jealous boyfriend with circumstantial evidence pointing his way. The case would be clean, easy to prosecute, easy for the public to understand. "I'm just saying we should be thorough," I insisted. "And I'm saying we have our man." Kingsley stood up. "The arraignment is scheduled for 9 a.m. Make sure he's ready." After the DA left, I sat alone in my office, reviewing the case file. The evidence against Charlie was substantial. The handprint, the blood on his shoes, the timeline discrepancy, the motive. But Dr. Moore's observations about the wounds kept circling in my mind. The tooth found at the scene, the excessive violence, the clinical precision. The case was closed officially. Charlie Wade would stand trial for the murder of Libby Ray. The evidence would likely convict him. But as I stared at the crime scene photos, at the inhuman precision of those wounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had missed something crucial. Something that existed in the narrow space between provable facts and intuition. Something that would explain how a jealous boyfriend had transformed into a calculating surgeon capable of keeping his victim alive for hours while systematically removing parts of her face. The true horror wasn't just what had happened to Libby Ray, it was the possibility that whoever had really done this might still be out there. 5 years had worn the edges off Libby Ray's case file, but not my memory of it. The photos inside had faded slightly, developing that yellowish tint that comes with time, but the images they captured remained as vivid in my mind as they'd been that November morning in Whitman Woods. I sat alone at my desk in the Pine Creek Police Department, the overhead fluorescents buzzing as they always did after hours. The station emptied out after 8 most nights. Small-town crime typically winding down with the setting sun. My promotion to sergeant had come with a slightly larger desk, but the same view of the parking lot and the same stack of unsolved cases that I couldn't let go. The front desk bell chimed, pulling me from my thoughts. Through the glass partition separating the bullpen from the lobby, I spotted a young woman talking to Officer Denton. She gestured with her hands as she spoke, her posture tense. Denton nodded, then pointed toward my desk before leading her through the security door. "Sarge, this is Ava Mitchell," Denton said. "She wants to file a report about someone following her." I noticed the woman, Ava, give me a quick, nervous smile. Her hair was in a braid, and she was wearing running clothes like she'd just finished working out. Her zippered jacket had Pine Creek Community College printed on it. "Thanks, Denton. I've got this." I motioned to the chair across from my desk. "Have a seat, Ms. Mitchell." Denton retreated, and Ava sat down, her hands resting in her lap. Up close, I noticed the light sheen of sweat still on her face, and the alert, cautious way her eyes tracked movement around the room. "So someone's following you?" I prompted, pulling a report form from my drawer. "Yes, for the past week, maybe longer." Her voice was steady despite her obvious concern. "I run every evening after work, around 7. Same trail at Riverside Park." I wrote this down, something clicking in the back of my mind. "And you're seeing the same person each time?" "I think so. It's hard to tell because he stays far enough away that I can't make out features. Just a silhouette against the trees along the edge of Whitman Woods." Ava leaned forward slightly. "At first I thought it was just another runner, but he never passes me or falls behind. He keeps the exact same distance." "Have they approached you or spoken to you?" "No." She shook her head. "But last night, I stopped to retie my shoe and he stopped too. When I started running again, so did he. That's when I knew for sure I wasn't imagining it." I continued taking notes, my pen pressing harder into the paper than necessary. "Do you run alone?" "Usually. My roommate used to join me, but our schedules don't match up anymore." "And you always take the same route?" Ava nodded. "The main trail around Riverside Park, then the connector path to campus. The same route Libby Ray had run 5 years earlier." I kept my expression neutral as I finished the report, but my stomach tightened. "Anyone specific you think might be doing this? Ex-boyfriend? Someone from school or work who's shown unhealthy interest?" "No, nothing like that. I wait tables at Murphy's bar downtown. The customers are mostly regulars, nothing weird." She paused. I broke up with my boyfriend 3 months ago, but he moved to Boston. This doesn't feel like him. Murphy's Bar. Another echo of Libby's case that I couldn't ignore. Here's what I recommend, I said, setting down my pen. Change your running route, different parks, different times of day. Run with a friend whenever possible. And carry this. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small canister of pepper spray. It's legal in Maine as long as it's for self-defense. Ava took the pepper spray, turning it over in her hands. You think I'm in danger? I chose my words carefully. I think someone following you consistently is concerning enough to take precautions. I'm also going to have patrol cars swing by Riverside Park more frequently during evening hours. Thank you. She slipped the pepper spray into her jacket pocket and stood up. I'll change my route starting tomorrow. One more thing. What time do you finish your runs usually? Around 8, 8:30. And you work at Murphy's regularly? 5 nights a week, 2 to 7. Another parallel. I handed her my card. Call this number directly if you see this person again or if anything else happens that makes you uncomfortable. Doesn't matter how small it seems. After Ava left, I sat staring at the report I'd just completed. The similarities were too specific to dismiss. A young woman running the same trail as Libby, working at the same bar, being watched from the tree line of Whitman Woods. I waited until the station was nearly empty before heading to the records room in the basement. The fluorescent lights flickered as I pulled the metal chain to turn them on. The dim lighting made the rows of filing cabinets look eerie in the basement room. The air smelled of paper and dust. Libby's case file was stored in a bottom drawer under Closed Homicide. The folder had grown thick over the investigation. Crime scene photos, witness statements, forensic reports, trial transcripts. Charlie Wade had maintained his innocence through trial and sentencing, but the evidence against him had been considerable. The bloody handprint on the window, the unexplained time gap, the history of jealousy. I spread the contents across a small table in the corner of the records room. The crime scene photos still had the power to turn my stomach. Libby's mutilated face, the clinical precision of the wounds, the carefully arranged body. I flipped through Dr. Moore's final autopsy report, rereading the section that had always troubled me. The facial injuries exhibit extraordinary precision, consistent with surgical technique rather than typical violent assault. The force required to remove tissue in this manner exceeds normal human capability without specialized tools and training. The report had been admitted at trial, but the defense's attempt to argue that Charlie lacked the medical knowledge or physical capability for such wounds had failed to persuade the jury. The prosecution had simply suggested he'd used tools found in Libby's kitchen, and his construction job explained his physical strength. I pulled out my notes from that night. The blood spatter in the bathroom reaching unusually high on the walls, the drag marks to the window, the precise arrangement of the body in Whitman Woods. Charlie Wade had been convicted on circumstantial evidence that painted him as a jealous boyfriend, but the methodology of the crime had never aligned with that narrative. Now a new woman was being watched along the same trail. I replaced everything in the file except a copy of the case summary and one crime scene photo showing the bathroom blood spatter pattern. These I slipped into my personal notebook before returning the file to its drawer. Upstairs, I clocked out just after 10. The night air had the crisp bite of late October in Maine, not yet winter, but no longer fall. My breath fogged in front of me as I walked to my car, the parking lot empty except for my 10-year-old Jeep and a patrol car waiting for the night shift officer to return from a call. Instead of heading home, I drove toward Riverside Park. The park officially closed at dusk, but the gates remained open year-round. I parked in the empty lot and sat for a minute, engine off, listening to the tick of the cooling metal and watching the tree line across the open field. My flashlight carved a narrow path through the darkness as I followed the main trail. The same route Libby Ray had run 5 years ago. The same route Ava Mitchell ran now. The path curved around a small pond before straightening along the edge of Whitman Woods. The boundary between maintained parkland and wild forest was distinct. Cleared trail on one side, dense trees on the other. My footsteps sounded unnaturally loud in the stillness, crunching on the gravel path. I stopped at a point where the woods came closest to the trail. From here, someone standing among the trees would have a clear view of runners while remaining mostly hidden in shadow. I turned to face the forest, sweeping my flashlight across the first line of trees. Nothing moved, but the weight of being watched pressed against my back. I turned in a slow circle, light extended, revealing nothing but empty trail and silent trees. The sensation persisted. I continued walking, following the trail as it curved back toward the park entrance. The beam of my flashlight caught something pale in the middle of the path about 20 yards ahead. As I approached, the object took shape. A white running shoe, women's size, lying perfectly centered on the trail as if placed deliberately. I crouched down without touching it. The shoe was new, expensive, the kind serious runners invested in. No scuff marks or signs of wear on the sole, no dirt despite lying on a gravel path. Just a clean, white shoe, abandoned in the middle of nowhere. I stood up and did another slow scan of my surroundings. The trees, the empty path, the dark outline of the park beyond. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound, but someone had left this shoe here, and I had little doubt about who it was meant for. The only question was whether they were watching me find it. I set the white running shoe on my kitchen table, carefully placed inside an evidence bag. After finding it on the trail, I documented its position, photographed it, and collected it according to protocol, my years in law enforcement running on autopilot even as my mind raced with possibilities. The shoe was oddly clean and seemed deliberately placed there. I couldn't figure out what it meant. My small house on the outskirts of Pine Creek offered little comfort that night. The kitchen clock read 11:48 p.m., and I'd been staring at the evidence bag for over an hour, nursing a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. 5 years after Libby Ray's murder, the nightmare appeared to be starting again. The knock at my door startled me. 3 sharp raps, urgent. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. My hand instinctively moved toward my service weapon as I approached the door. Through the peephole, I saw Sam Weathers standing on my porch, their breath fogged in the cold night air, shoulders hunched against the chill. But it was the expression on their face that made me unlock the door immediately. I'd never seen Sam look so rattled. "Sorry for showing up like this," they said as I opened the door. Their voice held none of its usual measured calm. "It's fine. Come in." Sam stepped inside, bringing the cold with them. They wore civilian clothes, jeans and a dark jacket, rather than their uniform. Off duty then, but clearly here on police business. "I need to show you something," Sam said, remaining standing even after I motioned toward a chair. "Want coffee first?" "No, this can't wait." Sam reached into their jacket pocket and withdrew a small evidence bag. Inside was a single yellowed tooth, dried blood still visible on its root. My stomach dropped. I recognized it instantly from the photographs. This tooth had been found near Libby Ray's body in Whitman Woods 5 years ago. "Is that what I think it is?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Sam nodded, placing the bag next to the running shoe on my kitchen table. "The tooth from Libby's crime scene, the one that was never entered into evidence." I stared at Sam, processing what this meant. "You took it." It wasn't a question. But Sam answered anyway, sinking into the chair across from me. "Yes. I removed it from the scene before it was cataloged." The admission hung in the air between us. Evidence tampering. A career-ending offense, possibly criminal charges. 5 years of working together, and Sam had never hinted at this secret. "Why?" I finally asked. Sam ran a hand over their close-cropped beard, eyes fixed on the tooth in its plastic enclosure. "The case against Charlie Wade never sat right with me. The evidence fit too neatly in some ways and made no sense in others. You felt it too. I know you did." I couldn't deny it. Despite Charlie's conviction, questions had lingered. "The tooth was an anomaly," Sam continued. "Found 20 yards from the body, a single adult molar with no explanation for how it got there. It didn't fit the prosecution's narrative, so they ignored it. I knew if I logged it, it would be filed away and forgotten. So instead you pocketed it?" I kept my voice level, fighting my instinct to react with anger at this breach of protocol. "I kept it safe, and 2 weeks ago, I sent it to a lab in Massachusetts for DNA analysis. Called in a favor from a college friend who works there now." Sam pulled out a folded set of papers from an inside pocket and placed them on the table. "Lab results. The results came in today," they said. "That's why I'm here." I picked up the papers, scanning the technical jargon until I reached the conclusion section. What I read there made no sense. This says the DNA matches samples from 6 unsolved murders across 3 states, spanning 5 decades. Sam nodded. Same signature in each case, young women with parts of their faces surgically removed. The earliest match is from Portland, Oregon, 1973. But Charlie Wade wasn't even born then. Exactly. Sam leaned forward. Turn to page 3. I flipped to the page he pointed to, where someone had done another analysis. The writing got more scientific, but I noticed certain phrases right away. Genetic markers consistent with 19th century remains, DNA preservation anomalies. I don't understand, I said, looking up at Sam. This says the tooth's DNA matches remains from a grave in Boston dating to the 1800s. The lab ran the comparison twice, to be sure. The tooth's owner shares genetic markers with human remains excavated during a construction project in Boston 15 years ago. Those remains were identified as belonging to a Dr. Edward Blackwell who died in 1875. I set the papers down, trying to make sense of what Sam was telling me. That's impossible. DNA degrades over time. This has to be contamination or a mistake. My friend at the lab says it's neither. The sample was clean, the testing protocols rigorous. The tooth belonged to someone who, according to all scientific understanding, should have been dead for over a century. The coffee mug in front of me suddenly seemed insufficient. I stood up and walked to the cabinet above my refrigerator, pulling down a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Sam accepted the drink without comment. "So what exactly are you suggesting?" I asked after taking a long sip. "That we're looking for someone who's been killing women since at least the 1970s, and who somehow has DNA matching a 19th century corpse." Sam met my eyes. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just sharing the facts." We sat in silence for a moment, the implications too bizarre to voice aloud. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. "There's more," I finally said. "A woman came into the station tonight. Ava Mitchell. She works at Murphy's Bar and runs the same trail Libby Ray did. Someone's been following her for the past week." Sam's posture stiffened. "From the tree line?" "Yes. And after she left, I drove to Riverside Park to check it out." I gestured to the evidence bag containing the white shoe. "I found this on the trail. Brand new, no dirt, placed there deliberately." "A message," Sam said. "Or a warning. It gets worse. Ava Mitchell's schedule mirrors Libby Ray's almost exactly. Working at Murphy's until 7, running afterward." Sam took another drink, their hand not entirely steady. "Do you think Charlie Wade was innocent?" "I think we need to check on Ava Mitchell right now." I reached for my phone. "Let me run a location check on her cell phone first." Using the department's emergency tracking system, I entered Ava's number from the report she'd filed earlier. The system took 30 seconds to ping her phone's location. "She's at her apartment on Maple Street," I said, reading the results. "But the phone hasn't moved in 12 hours. It's stationary." Sam and I exchanged a look that contained all our unspoken fears. "Could be charging her phone while she sleeps," Sam suggested, but their tone lacked conviction. At this point, I'm not taking chances. I stood up, collecting my service weapon and badge. "Let's go check on her." Sam nodded, already heading for the door. Neither of us verbalized what we were thinking, that if the DNA results were accurate, if the same person who killed Libby Ray was now stalking Ava Mitchell, then we weren't merely dealing with a serial killer. We were hunting something that defied rational explanation, something that had been hunting in Pine Creek for far longer than we'd realized. As we stepped out into the cold night air, the wind picked up, whistling through the bare trees surrounding my house. I locked the door behind us, though in that moment, lock seemed an inadequate defense against the horror we were beginning to understand. "What's her address?" Sam asked as we approached their car. 412 Maple, apartment 3B. I checked my watch, 12:22 a.m. Let's hope we're just being paranoid. But as we pulled away from my house and headed toward town, I knew we weren't. The tooth, the DNA, the shoe on the trail, they matched up too well to brush off. Someone had taken Libby Ray 5 years ago and put her through hell. Someone with medical skills and crazy strength. Someone who might now have Ava Mitchell. The clock on Sam's dashboard read 2:13 a.m. when we pulled up to Ava Mitchell's apartment building on Maple Street. The 3-story brick complex stood silent under the weak yellow glow of security lights. most windows dark except for a few with the blue flicker of late-night television. "Apartment 3B, I reminded Sam as we exited the car, our breath clouding in the cold night air. We climbed the metal stairs, our steps making noise against the steel steps. I noticed right away that something was off. Ava's door was open a bit, showing a thin line of darkness between the door and frame. I pulled out my gun, and Sam did the same without saying anything. We'd worked together long enough that we could talk with just looks and small hand signals. "Ava Mitchell? Pine Creek Police?" I called out, positioning myself against the wall beside the door frame. No response came from inside. I pushed the door open with my foot and entered the darkened apartment, weapon raised. Sam moved to cover the corners of the room. The living room appeared untouched. A small sofa faced a television, textbooks stacked neatly on a coffee table, a half-empty mug resting on a coaster. Everything looked perfectly normal. Too normal. "Check the kitchen," I whispered to Sam. "I'll take the bedroom and bathroom." I moved down a short hallway, checking each doorway. The bedroom door stood open, revealing a neatly made bed with an open textbook placed face down on the comforter. Nothing seemed disturbed. When I reached the bathroom, I stopped cold. Blood covered the walls in a spray pattern identical to what I'd seen 5 years ago in Libby Ray's apartment. High-velocity spatter reached all the way to the ceiling, a constellation of red droplets that told of extreme force. Unlike Libby's bathroom, the mirror here remained intact, but it reflected something that turned my insides cold. Written in blood across the white shower curtain were 2 words: "She's mine." "Sam," I called, my voice tight. "In here." Sam appeared beside me, inhaling sharply at the sight. "It's the same pattern as Libby's bathroom." I approached the shower and used my pen to pull back the curtain. The tub was empty, except for a single bloody handprint on the porcelain edge, much too large to belong to Ava. "Look," Sam pointed at the floor where droplets of blood formed a trail leading out of the bathroom. We followed the crimson path back through the hallway into the kitchen. The drops grew smaller and farther apart until they ended at the sink, where the window stood open to the night air. Bloody handprints marked the white windowsill in smears of dark red. On the counter below sat Ava's phone, still connected to its charger. "He took her through the window," I said, leaning out to look at the ground below. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a 15-foot drop to a grassy area. Sam called for backup while I continued examining the scene from the window. In the beam of my light, I saw disturbed earth and drag marks leading from directly beneath the window toward the tree line 30 yards away. The edge of Whitman Woods. The same woods where we had found Libby's body. "Backup's coming. 10 minutes for the first units," Sam said, joining me at the window. I nodded, trying to calculate how long our suspect had been gone. The blood in the bathroom wasn't completely dry, but had begun to darken around the edges. 2, maybe 3 hours at most. "We need to secure the perimeter," I said, "and I want officers at every trail entrance to Whitman Woods." Outside, we examined the area beneath Ava's window more closely. The drag marks were clearer now, 2 parallel lines in the soft earth where someone had pulled a body toward the trees. "He's not trying to hide it," Sam said, crouching near the tracks. "No," I agreed. "He wants us to follow." Within minutes, squad cars arrived, their emergency lights washing the building in alternating red and blue. I briefed the responding officers quickly, instructing them to establish a perimeter and wait for the forensics team before entering the apartment. By 3:30 a.m., the scene was alive with police activity. The forensics team worked in the bathroom while 2 K9 officers waited with their dogs. Dawn approached as I gathered the search team at the property edge, the eastern sky lightening to a deep blue. 15 officers plus the K9 units waited for my instructions. I looked at their faces, all people I'd worked with for years, all trained professionals. None of them knew what we might really be hunting. As I briefed them, I deliberately omitted Sam's DNA revelation. How could I explain we were pursuing someone who should have died a century ago? Instead, I stuck to what they could accept. Ava Mitchell had been abducted, likely by the same perpetrator who killed Libby Ray 5 years earlier. Our search would concentrate on Whitman Woods, particularly near where Libby's body had been found. "Our priority is finding Ava Mitchell alive," I concluded. "This perpetrator has a pattern of keeping victims alive for some time. We have a window of opportunity. Let's use it." As the teams deployed with their equipment, dogs pulling at leashes, officers checking thermal imaging devices, my phone rang. The station number appeared on the screen. "Reynolds," I answered, walking away from the others. "Sergeant, I thought you should know right away," the night dispatcher said. "Charlie Wade was granted early release yesterday." My free hand tightened into a fist. "What?" "The parole board approved it 2 days ago. New evidence was submitted suggesting his innocence in the Libby Ray case. I just found out while processing the daily reports." "What new evidence?" I asked. "The file says an anonymous source delivered evidence to the DA's office last month. The details are sealed, but it was compelling enough for them to expedite his release." After ending the call, I stood watching the search teams enter the woods as first light broke over the horizon. Sam approached, their expression questioning. "Charlie Wade was released yesterday," I said. "Anonymous evidence suggesting his innocence." Sam's face hardened with understanding. "He's creating another scapegoat." I nodded, watching the searchers disappear among the trees, following the drag marks into Whitman Woods. Our killer engineered this timing perfectly. Charlie Wade, recently released and supposedly vengeful, becomes the obvious suspect when another young woman disappears. The sun was coming up as we stared at the spot where Ava had been taken. Deep in those woods, a killer was waiting. Someone who'd been hunting in Pine Creek way longer than we knew. Whoever it was had planned everything down to the last detail, and probably even made sure Charlie would get out of jail just in time to take the blame again. The search teams moved through Whitman Woods, coming together and splitting up as they checked different trails in the early morning. I led our group along the eastern paths, with the cold morning air stinging my face. Sam stayed close by, both of us looking carefully at the forest floor for any sign of disturbance beyond the initial drag marks we'd followed from Ava's apartment. 6 hours since she was taken, Sam said quietly as we paused at a junction of two trails. "If he follows the same pattern as with Libby." I nodded, not needing to hear the rest. We both knew what awaited Ava if we failed to find her in time. Radio updates came regularly, each team reporting their position and findings, or lack thereof. The helicopter arrived shortly after 7, the sound of its rotors cutting through the morning stillness as it began sweeping patterns above the tree line. The woods seemed to absorb our presence, muffling our voices and footsteps as we pushed deeper. 15 officers plus K9 units spread across 2 square miles of dense forest, and yet I felt the vastness working against us. Too much ground, too little time. "This way," I pointed north where the trees grew thicker. "The dogs are picking up something." At 9:37 a.m., my radio crackled with Officer Martinez's voice. "K9 has a strong scent, northeast quadrant, heading toward the old mill." I brought the radio to my mouth. "All teams converge on Blackwell Mill. Approach with caution." Sam and I broke into a run, following the trail that curved toward the northeastern section of the woods. Within minutes, the decaying structure came into view. A hulking silhouette of weathered wood and rusted metal standing in a small clearing. Blackwell Mill had been abandoned since the 1940s. Its production halted when newer facilities opened closer to town. Named after its original owner who built it in the 1850s, it now stood as a crumbling reminder of Pine Creek's logging past. "Building's been searched dozens of times over the years," Sam said as we approached. "Teenagers use it for parties, nothing but empty rooms." I drew my weapon anyway. Then he knows something we don't. The 2 German shepherds pulled at their leashes, both alert and pointing toward the main entrance. Other officers converged from different directions, weapons drawn. "Standard sweep," I instructed. "Teams of 2. Radio if you find anything." Inside, dust floated in our flashlight beams. The main floor had rusty machines and fallen support beams. Our footsteps rang out on the bent floorboards as we walked through the processing area toward the old office rooms. In the back office, Officer Ramirez's dog stopped suddenly, pawing at a section of floor in the corner. "What is it?" I asked, moving closer. Ramirez knelt beside his partner. "He's not trained for cadaver detection, just human scent. There's something underneath." I crouched next to him, running my hands over the wooden planks. They seemed solid until I applied pressure to one section and felt a slight give. Looking closer, I noticed scratch marks around the edges of what appeared to be a concealed trap door. "Get me a crowbar," I said, and someone pressed the cold metal into my hand. The wood splintered as I pried up the hidden door, revealing a set of narrow stone steps descending into darkness. "You should wait for backup," Martinez suggested from behind me. "If Ava's down there, every minute counts," I replied, already directing my flashlight beam down the steps. "Sam, with me. Everyone else secure the perimeter and be ready if anyone tries to escape." The air got colder as we went down, the walls changing from wood to earth to fitted stone blocks. This construction was older than the mill above, built with much more care. At the bottom stood a heavy wooden door, slightly ajar. I pushed it with my foot, weapon ready, and stepped into a room that made me stop mid-step. Photographs covered every wall, dozens, perhaps hundreds of women's faces looking out from the stone surface. Some pictures were yellowed with age, their edges curling. Others were crisp digital prints. They made a collage showing what looked like different eras, hairstyles and clothing from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and more recent years. "What is this?" Sam whispered. My flashlight lit up a photo of Libby Ray. She was smiling, but it looked like someone took the picture without her knowing, through a window. That part of the wall had more photos of her, running in the park, working at the diner, going into her apartment building. Right next to those were newer photos of Ava Mitchell. They were the same type of creepy stalker shots. Ava at work, jogging, studying at a coffee shop. But what really freaked me out were the older photos. Women I'd never seen before, some pictures looking like they were from decades ago. Each one had names and dates written in super neat handwriting. Portland, 1973. Boston, 1981. Chicago, 1995. I read aloud, examining one faded section. In the center of the room was an old medical table with dark dried blood all over it. Leather straps hung from each corner. Next to it, a small cart on wheels had surgical tools, all lined up and shiny in our flashlight beams. "He's been hunting them," Sam said, watching them for weeks before taking them. As other officers filed carefully down the stairs, I moved toward a desk in the corner where a leather-bound journal lay open. I pulled on a latex glove before touching it, carefully turning pages filled with anatomical drawings and notes written in faded brown ink. The text described facial symmetry and the preservation of beauty through consumption in elegant, formal handwriting that seemed from another century. I turned to the final entry, dated yesterday. "The subject has been prepared. Initial markings complete. Must relocate to the sacred grounds before completion of the procedure. The final transformation shall occur where it all began, beneath the watchful eyes of my forebears." I looked up at Sam. "Sacred grounds. He's taken her to a cemetery." Sam's eyes widened. "St. Michael's, the oldest cemetery in Pine Creek. And there's a Blackwell buried there," I added, the connection suddenly clear. "Edward Blackwell, the original mill owner." I rushed toward the stairs, already calling into my radio. "All units redirect to St. Michael's Church Cemetery, north side of town. Possible kidnapping victim on site." We left officers to secure the mill as evidence techs arrived. The drive to St. Michael's took 7 minutes of tense silence, each second diminishing Ava's chances. The cemetery appeared ahead, a small, overgrown plot surrounded by rusted iron fencing. The church behind it had been closed for decades, its stone walls crumbling and windows broken. "Spread out," I ordered as officers moved through the gate. "Look for freshly disturbed earth." I walked among the headstones, many so weathered their inscriptions had faded to nothing. Near the center stood a larger monument, a stone angel with wings spread wide over a marble slab. The name etched into the base read, "Dr. Edward Blackwell, 1813-1875. The ground before the monument had been recently disturbed, earth turned over in a rectangle the size and shape of a grave. "Here!" I shouted, dropping to my knees and beginning to dig with my hands. "Get shovels from the trucks!" Officers surrounded me, some joining with their hands while others ran for equipment. The cool earth gave way easily, still loose from recent digging. 3 feet down, my fingers struck something solid. Wood. As shovels arrived, we cleared earth from around what appeared to be a wooden box. Not a standard coffin, but something handcrafted, approximately 6 feet long by 2 feet wide. "Get a pry bar," I called. clearing the last dirt from the lid. When the tool arrived, I wedged it under the edge and pushed down with all my strength. The wood creaked, then gave way with a splintering crack. I pulled the broken lid aside and aimed my flashlight inside. Ava Mitchell lay unconscious, her wrists and ankles bound with leather straps. Her face remained untouched, no surgical cuts or missing features like Libby had suffered. An IV line ran into her arm from a small bag of clear fluid suspended from the inside of the coffin lid. I pressed my fingers to her neck, feeling a faint but steady pulse. "She's alive. Get paramedics here now." As officers lifted her carefully from the makeshift grave, I noticed something clutched in her right hand. A small folded piece of paper. I gently removed it, unfolding a note written in the same elegant script as the journal. "You've found what I've allowed you to find. The girl lives because her time has not yet come. Our work continues." I pocketed the note as paramedics rushed in with a gurney. Ava remained unconscious as they assessed her condition, attaching monitoring equipment and replacing the unknown IV with their own. "Sedated but stable," one paramedic reported. "Looks like a surgical sedative. She'll need toxicology at the hospital." As they prepared to transport her, I stood beside the empty grave, looking at Edward Blackwell's headstone. Officers secured the scene around me, placing evidence markers and taking photographs. Our killer had led us here deliberately, leaving Ava alive when he could have killed her. The underground room, the photographs spanning decades, the journal entries. We'd found his workshop, his trophy room, his private space, but the man himself remained a shadow. I walked back to my car as they loaded Ava into the ambulance. She had survived, unlike Libby and countless others before her. But as I watched the ambulance pull away, I knew this wasn't over. The evidence we'd discovered today only confirmed what Sam's DNA analysis had suggested. We were hunting something that had been killing for decades, perhaps longer.